All right, here we are at another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies. Good morning, Peter.
Hello, Bill. Hello, everyone.
Here we are at a very interesting subject.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, we've done a podcast similar to this some time ago. I didn't go look and see what it was, but I wanted to tweak it. So technically, I'm dedicating this podcast to my creative REI reply users. And if you're not a creative REI reply user, I totally understand that. It will still work for you. It's just that they already have the tools and it will excel. So today's podcast is totally for them. And
Okay.
here's the name of the podcast. Episode number 401 is Retire Early with These Creative Real Estate Strategies. Okay, retire early with these creative real estate strategies.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Here's the description. Imagine retiring years or decades ahead of time, living the life you've always dreamed about. Seems too good to be true, right? But what if you found out all you have to do is the exact right moves in creative real estate, and retiring early isn't just a possibility? It's a reality not as hard to do as most think. In this single podcast episode, you will reveal this hidden blueprint that only those who have completed it know about it. No, I'm not saying it's a walk in the park. It does take grit, a dash of moxie, and a tested and proven playbook. Most believe and think that creative real estate is all about being creative. Not even close to being true. Not these days. Especially in today's fast growing world of technology. Today, it is more about the tools than the knowledge. It is not about thinking outside of the box anymore, Peter. It comes down to the perfect strategy and the ideal tools to do the heavy lifting work. Nowadays, you don't need seminars, days of home study, and months of practice to do creative real estate deals. You just need today's revealed secrets in this podcast. Do I have your attention?
Oh, I'm listening. How about you, folks? Mighty strong words there, Mr. Hawthorne.
Yeah, well, it's because it comes from the hot.
Yep. Things certainly have changed.
Yeah, a lot.
It's like we're watching the Jetsons do real estate.
Yeah. So, just for let me go grab something. Just for a peek into Bill's life. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let's I'm going to reveal something to you. Okay. Let me go find it here. Give me 1 second. So, just in case you're curious, how do I come up with all these titles and these ideas of doing podcasts, right?
Sure.
So I read a lot. I read way too much. Okay. And one of the books I'm reading right now, because I usually try to read 2 books at a time. And I read one in the morning and one in the afternoon. So the book that I'm reading right now is called The Coming Wave. Coming Wave by Mustafa Suleyman. Mustafa Suleyman. It's just type in The Coming Wave in YouTube. I mean in Amazon, right? Now, Mr. Suleyman was he was the co-founder of the pioneering AI company called DeepMind, which is part of Google. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to make human robots.
I just saw on the news today they're working on one for people to have in their home so it follows you around. Like, yay, it's what I want. I got a dog following me around. I need
There's
that.
there's a name called, I think it's called AI biology or something. I've got the wrong name, but anyways, so this struck this conversation that we're about to have today. It kind of provoked me to talk about this
Mhm.
because I know that I need to do housekeeping right now. We haven't started the podcast, but my philosophy is this: in 1923, because it's 2000, I'm sorry, 1924, because it's 2024 now, right?
Yeah.
100 years ago. What was the automobile like?
Mm.
It was primitive, right?
Yeah.
And we thought, oh, look at us. We're just the coolest species on the planet. Look at the innovation that we have. Look how cool we are,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Aren't we like the hottest tickets as human beings? Like, oh my God, look at this technology,
Yeah.
right? And now it's 100 years later. Look at the car. Now you have to realize in 1924 there were not windshield wipers and there were not air conditioners and there were not disc brakes and all the things that make our cars really safe so we could go 100 miles an hour, 90 miles an hour,
That's right.
right? Comfortably, right? Because most people on the highway drive 80 or 90 miles an hour now, at least when I am, anyways. It's pretty common, right? Especially down here because the speed limit is 70 miles an hour. So
Yeah.
anyway, so I'm completely diverted. My point is that take that same analogy and plug it into technology in AI.
Boy.
And we think open AI is like really cool and it's like the thing and all that stuff, right? But what happens in 100 years from now? I'm
afraid to think 10 years from now. Forget 100.
I was watching the news this morning because I was checking the weather up in Connecticut for my kids because, like you said, there's snow there.
Mhm.
So there was a guy, I don't know who the guy's name is, I haven't looked it up, but he wrote a book called 2054.
Ooh.
He talks about the geopolitical and AI, because I'm going to tell you, Mustafa talked about our AI getting rid of our government. So it's pretty insane.
I like that idea because anything could do better than our governments all over the world. God, they're doing such a crappy job. Yeah,
so that's
I'd
what
rather have a computer.
that's not what today's podcast is 100% about. Some of it is there, but I just wanted to give you some background. Anyways, so let's just do our housekeeping stuff. So we record this podcast every Thursday morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We live stream it on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If you want to be part of the podcast, you can do that. I want to apologize to our listeners because I did not realize this. We had some technical problems with our website at flippinghousesforrookies.com, and it was down for a couple weeks. I had no idea, but it's all been fixed again. So if you were on there recently and it didn't work, it's not because I'm going on a business or I'm in trouble or anything like that. It's just that I'm in Florida working on I'm on a retreat. I have been for 7 months and just not 100% paying attention and slipped through the cracks, but I got it fixed now. And I'm coming home soon. So that's almost over. Anyways, you can go to flippinghousesforrookies.com and you can go to the top right-hand side if you want to send us a private message. If you want to be part of our little mastermind group, you can go to WhatsApp Messenger. There's a group called Let's Talk Real Estate. There's a bit over 100 people there that you can mastermind with. If you have questions about today's podcast, please put them in wherever you can type on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook, and we will gladly answer them. If not, please put the other questions in the other places. All right, so here we go. So, Pete, I know I made some bold promises in our podcast description,
Mm-hmm.
and I promise you I will over-deliver today.
Okay.
So let's just dive right in, although it's 9 minutes in. But let's start off by talking about how to retire early.
Sure.
And of course, individual needs vary only because we all have our own type of lifestyle. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I strongly suggest starting off replacing your current lifestyle first, then trying to take on the traveling the world stuff.
Okay.
So, I mean, because a lot of people, when they talk about retiring, they add things to their, like, oh, I want to go to Hawaii 4 times a year, and they haven't been to Hawaii once yet. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
um, and also when I'm talking about this next couple minutes, location matters. The cost of living varies greatly depending on where you live. Now, I'm not telling you to move, but I am saying that just realize that's going to change some of our numbers today. You just need to do a little bit more if you want to stay. Like if you're in California and
Mhm.
you're paying $6 for a gallon of gas, and I'm in Florida and I'm paying $3 for a gallon of gas, that makes a difference.
Sure.
Okay, obviously, and of course, we should always factor in some inflation over time.
Hmm.
Right? Money must grow. Money must grow. Realize everything on planet Earth is either growing, staying the same, or shrinking. And staying the same is like shrinking because everything else is growing, especially inflation.
Yeah, it's shooting right past you.
Right. So, like with money, like for example, if you've been in a job and for the last 10 years, say 10 years ago you were making $25 an hour, you were considered of the elite. I
Mm.
just saw that California just passed minimum wage at $20 an hour.
Yeah, fast food workers, $20.
Right. So goes the Big Mac being $5 anymore, and you're going to pay $20 in McDonald's for a meal.
Hmm.
Right. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous, but that's inflation. Right. And of course, our definition of inflation means too much money, not enough products. Right. So that
Hmm.
means you have 20 people trying to buy one house. It's going to raise the price of the house. Right.
Yep.
So all right. So we're going to factor in some inflation just so you can be covered. Okay.
That's one thing I really love about real estate is that when you have property, over time it appreciates or at least keeps up with inflation.
Right.
So if you have rent in 2, 3, 4 years, the rent goes up too. So
Right.
people with properties are doing fine with the crazy inflation we have. So that's one of the things that I really like about real estate. It keeps up with that kind of thing to some degree.
This is true. All right. So let's start on this program uh, by doing this.
Hmm.
So I'm not going to spend a long time on this because I want to get around to what to do, but this is the beginning of how you should retire early. Okay. We
Hmm.
actually have, which I got from Richard Roop 20 years ago,
Hmm.
an Excel spreadsheet that will do this for you. In other words, it's called the billion dollar grid is what Richard Roop called it. Okay. He was a Ron LeGrand student. He was actually one of my coaches. He wasn't one of his guys. Willie Hooks was my coach.
Hmm.
And they gave it to us during that coaching program. So I paid 10 grand for this puppy, right? So uh, so this Excel spreadsheet is you build your lifestyle on the Excel spreadsheet. You want to drive a Lamborghini, you want to have 5 houses, you want this, you want that. And then at the end of the spreadsheet, right, after you built your life, your desired life,
Hmm.
right? And he wasn't talking about retiring, he was just talking about building your desired life. At the end of it, what it did is it broke down, what you thought you were going to have for an average profit on a house, and it told you how many houses you need to buy to live that lifestyle.
Hmm.
It's pretty cool. I still have it. We never use it because it's his. I haven't promoted it, but it's the first time I ever talked about it, right?
Yeah.
So this is going to be a little bit simpler than that. Okay. And here's what we're going to do. So the first thing we're going to do is I want you to add up 13 weeks of your spending.
Hmm.
Now I do this by going through my checkbook. Now I have multiple checkbooks, right? By the way, you can do this for anything. If you have a house and you want to know what that house is costing you, you should add up all the expense, over 13 weeks. Some of my coaching clients they haven't done a lot of deals, but they'll have a checkbook, they'll have an LLC and a checkbook for each house. So
Hmm.
they can do it that way. I don't do it that way, but what we do is in QuickBooks, we subcategorize. Um, So what happens is in QuickBooks is for a contractor, you could make jobs,
Hmm.
generate a job. And the reason for that is you can break out that job and you can apply income to that job and you could apply any expenses and payroll and everything. So when you go on to QuickBooks, you can do a profit and loss statement on that job. Right.
Yep.
That's how we do the houses. We don't call them we don't call them jobs. We call them houses. So each house is set up like a job. So the income and the expenses all come from that. So it stays separate in QuickBooks. This is how I do it. Okay. I don't have to do it in my physical checkbook. But if you were to go through your checkbook, hopefully you only have one checkbook. If you have multiple, you'll have to do this the other way. And you're going to add up all your expenses, okay, for 13 weeks. Now, when I do this, I don't like to go on to, because some people will cheat and they'll go on and they'll just pull a statement and they'll just take the total number and that will be that. Okay. What I like to do is I like to actually take a yellow notebook pad and I like to go through the checkbook and I like to make categories, like groceries and utilities and, like taxes and cars and, so I break it down. Because there may be, first of all, when you do this, I promise you, oh my goodness, I promise you, I've done this with so many people, that the first thing that will happen is there's things in there that you probably don't realize you're spending as much on. Like when I did it with my daughter one time, my oldest daughter, when she was in college, she didn't realize how much money she was spending on coffee at Dunkin' Donuts.
Yep.
Right. So,
yep.
I mean, that was just one example. It could be hair salons, it could be dinners. My youngest daughter, it's takeout food. They're famous for like spending, $20-$30 to go get takeout food. Right. And they didn't realize it. So, So the best thing in the world you can do is start with, what are you doing right now? So take 13 weeks of your expenses. It's usually done in a checkbook. By doing it this way, because you'll be paying your credit cards and stuff, you'll have all that expenses. Don't take into account that you have $10,000 on a credit card. We don't care about the $10,000. I'm going to tell you how to fix that. But for right now, I just want the payments for the $10,000.
Right.
Right. So the 13 weeks is only covering the expenses you need in your life. Right. So then once you have that total number, right, of the 13 weeks, now you're going to divide it into 13. Now, once you divide it into 13, you know how much your weekly expenses are.
Sure.
Now, you don't need to do this to retire early. You could do this for anything in your life. It is actually an amazing drill.
Well, you should know what's happening with your finances. Right. You should take a really good look at them.
So if you do this, right, and you find out that your expenses are $900 a week, it gives you conscious, analytical, total cause over your life. Because now you need to know, for you to break even, you need $900 a week. And oh yeah, by the way, break even isn't good enough. You need to also have reserves.
Right.
Right, because everything grows. Okay.
Well, beside that, if you'd plan out, here's what we have to spend, things happen that you do not count on. No one sits there goes, and then don't forget, a tire will go, the engine, I'll need the $300 for the dog and $400 for my. You don't think of things like that. Who plans on disasters? But they do happen. So a percentage needs to be kicked up on top of that. But
my wife drives me crazy. When I do this, my wife drives me crazy. Like I want to put a gun to my head.
Why?
She does it right down to like buying birthday gifts, Christmas gifts, how much it costs for Easter and Christmas and food and family picnics, and she just does it to the minutest.
It must be a girl thing, because Mary is a bookkeeper, so every inch to the penny though. Mary, don't worry about the 55 cents. I'll throw that in. Well, it makes it.
And on your regular finances, if you were clever, and I'm not saying you are or aren't, but if you were clever, once you break down all these items, what I have known is I've known. Well, you do this. Wow. You open savings accounts for each item, like rent and utilities, and like if you have one for birthday gifts, and you put percentages of your income into those accounts. So when it comes time for you to buy a birthday gift, you go to the savings account that has birthday gift money in there, and you just spend that money.
Yeah, a certain amount. Right? Yeah, what I've heard, I've seen
vacations.
Like you should figure out everything that you own, you've got refrigerators, stoves, cars, and things, and how much they cost over how much time and how much a month you might have to put aside. $5 for toasters, or whatever it is. And if you did that, when something broke, you'd have the money for it. Who plans that well ahead? But wouldn't be a bad thing, because I need 1,200 to fix my car and I don't have it. Well, should have planned
So
that.
I'm not trying to be that minute at this point.
Yeah.
I'm just trying
Yeah.
to get a concept. So you add up 13 weeks. I prefer you do like categories, main categories, like like mortgage, utilities, cars,
Yes.
insurance, that kind
Food,
of stuff. Just
food,
major
clothing. Yeah.
categories. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So once you do that, then you add it all up to a total number, and then you break it down per week. And that's going to be helpful for you because you'll need to know how much you need to generate per week or per month. I don't do anything weekly. I do everything monthly.
Yeah.
So all my money goes into a savings account. Actually, it's a checking account that has no checks, and it goes into a checking account. All the income goes into that checking account.
Mm-hmm.
It all goes there. There's no checks. I can't use it. And then once a month, I sit down and I pay my bills, and I take the money out of that checking account and put it into the checking account where I am writing the checks. And then this way here, it doesn't disappear, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then what I prefer you do, which is a big ask, it's a big ask. And in the beginning, you may not be able to do this, but I prefer you do about a 30%. Now, when you're doing your numbers, monetarily, you may not be able to do this.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're doing your numbers, I want you to add 30% for cushion.
Mm-hmm.
So if you need $1,000 a week or $4,000 a month, multiply that by 1.30%, and you get $5,200 a month.
Right. That's the things that will happen that you don't count on happening, but they will happen.
Right. So now at $5,200 a month, I didn't do this. At $5,200 a month, right?
Mm-hmm.
Divide that by 4.3 because that's how many weeks there are average in a month.
Yeah.
That means you need $1,209 to break even,
Mm-hmm.
not $1,000.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And that'll cover inflation. That'll cover the mistakes. That'll cover all that stuff. Right.
Sure. Yep.
Okay. Now comes the important part.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So does that all make sense? This is
Totally.
where you start to retire. So you have to have an idea how much you need because I'm going to tell you, I got this idea. Oh my goodness. I want to say 25 years ago. It might be 20. I don't know. But before I even started I was doing some real estate or trying to do real estate, but not like I am now.
Mm-hmm.
If you read any one of Robert Kiyosaki's books, either Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I've not read all his books. I've only read the first couple. In Cash Flow Quadrant. I think it's in Cash Flow Quadrant. It's in one of those two books. He talks about how most people think you need millions of dollars to retire.
Yeah.
His concept is if you need $5,200 a month, then have enough assets to cover the $5,200 a month with the least amount of work as possible.
Yeah, the assets generate the cash flow for that.
With the least amount of time as possible. So there is no way, and I struggle this with my other partner because he's young, but there is no way that you can have assets that are completely passive and you do nothing with them. Unless, of course, you're in the stock market and you just want somebody else to manage your portfolio, then that's less money for you, and it is possible. But in real estate, it's a couple hours a month. We'll say 5 hours a month, maybe even 10, depending on how you're doing it. So if you could work 5 or 10 hours a month and make $5,200 a month, and live and retire, that's a good way to me. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it took you 20 hours, 5 hours a week, it's still ahead because it gives you a lot of time to do what you want to do.
Sure.
Right. So the idea is to make more than what you need on a monthly basis with an asset. So basically his thought process is assets bring you in money, liabilities cost you money. And I'm going to go over that in a bit, right?
Yep.
Right. So with that premise or that idea, now comes the important part. You need to focus on building assets that produce no less than $5,200 a month, if that's your number.
Yep.
So you need to focus on those assets that are going to produce that $5,200 a month. This takes all of the creative real estate. This is the playbook. This takes all of the crap out of your head and just figures out how can you do that. So when you're doing deal structuring, what are you looking at? How much will this add to my $5,200 a month, or subtract?
Ooh.
Right? Okay. We're going to strictly talk about creative real estate today as your asset, obviously, because we're creative real estate guys, and that's what this podcast is about. Of course, there are other assets than real estate, right? And the reason why I use real estate is because of a couple reasons. Like if you were to use the stock market or hedge funds or any of that kind of stuff, right? Where else in real estate, where else can you go put down $100 in a house, right? I'm sorry. I'm saying that wrong. Wrong. Yeah, I've changed my mind. So where else could you go? And let's take $100,000 house, right? And put down $5,000, which is 5% FHA mortgage. You put down $5,000, and then immediately, the day of closing, you have a $100,000 asset. So it goes from $5,000 to $100,000 immediately. Stock market can't do that.
Nope.
Right? If you want to get your $5,000 back because you need money, and the stock market, you would need to sell it, and it stops working for you. In real estate, you could refinance it, right? Even if it's with a private lender, you could refinance it and get your $5,000 back and still own the $100,000 asset.
Or you could take $5,000 out and go buy another one.
Yeah.
And now you have two. So 5,000 gets you one, 10,000 gets you two, but the 5 came out of the original 5. So people do that, even if they do go slow, but even the slow road, eventually they would get somewhere refinancing.
Now, I can't cover all of the little tricks today and all the little things, but I'm just trying to cover the main points. But let's look at this. Let's say you did this, and a year down the road or 2 years down the road or whenever, you have equity in the house. And say it's $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 in equity.
Yeah.
Real estate is the only way on planet Earth, that you can do this.
Okay.
You can take that $200,000 out in a loan.
Yeah.
And it costs you no tax money. If you had $200,000 in equity, in other words, yields in your tax in your
stocks
stock market, and you took it out, you'd have to pay taxes on it.
That's right, because that'd be a profit, income profit.
Now you can borrow from your stocks, right? If you have enough of them, but it's not so easy, right? So my point is that you could get chunks of dough later on, and it's tax free. You're not paying. You take $200,000 out of your house. Why sell the house? Just take the $200,000 out. Go do what you want to do. Let the tenant buyer keep paying for the $200,000, and you go do what you want with the $200,000. Where else are you going to do that? Right? And then we've done other podcasts on this, which I could probably do 10 podcasts just on this. Maybe not 10, but quite a few. Right? The amount of tax deductions you get on write-offs when you own the property.
Yep, a lot of benefits.
Right? So, what are the two things that you can do to live a better life financially? What are the two things that you can do?
Make more and decrease expenses.
There you go. So,
save money, tax breaks, cuts.
So tax breaks is like decreasing your expenses.
Yeah.
Because you might have a job and you're paying, I don't know, we'll say $30,000 a year in taxes, just
Mm,
because.
mm,
And all of a sudden you buy a house, and now all of a sudden that 30,000 is 20,000.
mhm,
So now instead of your W-2 form saying, oh well, you got back $2,000,
mhm.
now you're getting back $12,000 tax free,
That's right.
right? It works. This is how it happens.
It's very strange to say, "Oh, real estate will save you money." Would save me money? Doesn't it cost
Mhm.
money? If you do it the right way. However, whatever you put in, it will save you money. I mean, that's how the rich folks do it. That's how the politicians make the laws. Why don't we play the game? That's the game.
Right. Anyway, back to our retirement topic.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, if you have listened to one of the other many podcasts that we have, because now there's 401 of them, you should know in our deals, it is super simple to cash flow $600 to $900 on an average $300,000 house, especially when the average house in America is 419,000.
Yep.
Now, I know that there are some areas like the other coaching guy I work with, they work on houses that are 150,000. So you'll have to double your numbers if you're in that area. But honestly, the way the world is right now, we don't need to do deals in our backyard. Matter of fact, it's more detrimental to do deals in your backyard because you'll do less deals. It'll cost you money, and it'll be a lot of growing pains. Right? You're better off, right? Well, let's just put it this way: if I was selling, those 3x5 American flags with the
Yeah.
stick.
Yeah.
They wave them, right?
Yeah.
If I had those to be sold, what would make sense to you? That I sell them in Walmart? Now, Walmart's a bad example, or the local hardware store?
Uh-huh.
Or am I better off to go to a 4th of July parade where there's thousands of people and walk around and sell them there,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
This is the way real estate is. Which way do you want to do it? In your backyard, most often it's like you're trying to sell it, in a local hardware store, or where there's not as much traffic, or even in Walmart where there's a lot of traffic. How many of those people are actually looking for an American flag?
Yeah.
Where if you go sell that American flag, that little 3x5 American flag at the 4th of July parade that has thousands of people,
Mhm.
we'll say in Manhattan, for example, that has maybe millions of people, but definitely tens of thousands of people, right? Where would you rather be with that American flag? So this is how you should look at your real estate. You should be in the path of success where there is a lot of or more than usual amount of transactions.
Mm.
It doesn't matter if there's realtor deals or creative deals. It doesn't matter. It's just that there's a larger amount of transactions in that seclusion, right? And we're going to probably talk about this in another week or two because we're doing this with the Ugly House program that we're testing,
Uh-huh.
where you found that you could actually figure out where those properties are by just going on to, or where those clusters are,
Mm.
by just going into Zillow, typing in the city name and state or the zip code, and then on the top where it filters, you could put on there sold houses, and it'll show up clumps of the houses that are sold. So when you're picking your farm market, you should pick those areas, right? So, anyways, I spent too much time on being in your backyard. I think you get the point. Anyway, so we're going to base this off of an average sale of a $300,000 house,
Mhm.
which means if you average $600 a month in cash flow, right, per house, average 600. I'm telling you, this is a complete reality, and I'm going to show you why. I'm going to tell you why in a moment.
Mhm.
If you're not doing at least $600 a price in a house, your education stopped short. It left you at the edge of the cliff, and you're ready to fall off. Okay, not good. $600 a house means you need 8.6 houses to retire with $5,200 a month. So now, does that change creative real estate in your head? Well, hell, all I need is 9 houses. How long will it take me to get 9 houses so I could retire early?
Mm.
I'm going to tell you, for some of the younger people, it's decades early because, I mean, you could buy 9 houses in a year if you're aggressive,
Mm-hmm.
right? At $900 per house, $900 per month per house, you need 5.7 houses. So listen to what I'm telling you. I mean, you should play this a couple times so it settles into your mind. You need 5.7 houses, we'll say 6 houses, making $900 a month, and you can retire early. 5 to 6 houses, 5 to 6 houses, 5 to 6 houses, and you could quit your job. Now you can do that. You could do that in 6 months if you're aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
You could do that in a year. Maybe it takes you 5 years, right?
Well, it makes it very specific. It takes the gee, I need money. That's too general. You need to have like I need. So you would work on getting one, and then you get one. Then you'd work on let me get another one. Now I got 2, 4 to go. So to make it more of a game to play. Like let's get another. How fast can we get the next one?
Okay, I'm going to tell you why I coach. The exact reason why I coach. Only one reason.
Really?
Yep. I felt when I started, I couldn't get the help that I'm giving. Now, of course, that's bias. And of course, people are going to think, well, of course he says that. But I'm going to tell you the reason why. So, number one, what makes me qualified as a coach? Because I believe the best coach in the world is coaching someone he used to be. And that's me. And number two, what I do is I have this uncanny ability to just talk about the next step. So when I'm coaching you, it's like, okay, so we just got the memorandum signed. The next step is this. Now, in the coaching group, I'll tend to give 2 or 3 steps because my guys are a bit more experienced, but it's always the next step. So number one, knowing the next step, and number two, keeping it simple with just go do this, and then let me know when that happens. And I constantly walk people through the steps. Now, the reason why my coaching doesn't work is because either people don't do exactly what I ask them to do. They come up with a better way. They reinvent what I'm telling them. Or life gets in the way and they don't get a chance to do that. Those are the only 2 reasons why the coaching doesn't work. I've done hundreds of deals. I'm not saying that I'm a smart guy. I'm not saying that I'm a genius. I'm not saying I'm better than you. Matter of fact, I consider myself a plain old dumbass. And the reason why is because it takes me a while to learn sometimes, but once I get it, I get it. But more importantly, I figured out all the things not to do by being a dumbass, because I would plunge in and do shit that cost me a lot of money over the years. Millions of dollars. Right? So I'm not bragging. I'm just kind of giving you the idea that what you just said is really valuable, because when you're retiring, just the next step. How can I get either I have a deal I'm working on, so I need to do the next step until I can get that to produce my income towards my 5,200, or if you have a house that's producing, we'll say $900 a month, you need to say to yourself, how can I get my next deal? And that breaks down to, who can I talk to today to make an offer? That's the entire business right there, and a model. That's the business model right there. That's the entire strategy. And if you focus yourself on those things, and even I don't do this. Like right now, I'm off on a retreat. I've been gone for 7 months. My income is not crashed, but it's way down from 7 months ago. It's a very valuable lesson for me, because I promise you, when I go home, which will be in another, say, a month, it's going to be completely different for me, because now I know what I need to tweak, because I tested my life by stepping outside of it for 7 months. Right? Most people can't step outside of their life for 7 days. So I took a compliment, because I've been practicing this. You know this over the last 5 years. I take time off. I do a retreat. and then I come back, right?
Yeah.
This time I made it 7 months. Last time I made it 2 months. This time I made it 7 months. So to me, it's a compliment, right?
Sure.
It's just like you guys having to practice your scripts. After a while you get it. Well, I'm practicing not working,
Mhm.
right? And it takes a while to get it, and that's because I'm on the forefront. I have to figure it out. I'm not taking courses and trying to learn how to do it. I think probably the only one that probably could help me with this at this point, which I haven't done, I thought about it recently, is Dave Ramsey. He talks about reducing your debt. He's got a pretty good program. I've heard a lot of people use that program.
Oh,
He's got a really good program.
reducing debt.
Yeah, how you can pay off your houses and your debt and all that. It's very simple, and he's got it to a T. He's been doing it for a very long time, but I think he could help. And that might be one of my next levels, but we'll talk about that later.
Mhm.
All right, so back to the podcast. So that tells us that we can retire early in 5 to 8 years
Mhm.
if we follow this strategy, right? So that's buying one house per year. You can retire in 5 to 8 years. But what if you did 2 houses per year?
Mm.
Then all of a sudden you can retire in 2.5 to 4 years.
Sure.
How about 3 houses a year? Now, 3 houses a year is not a lot.
So one
We'll
every
say
4 months.
we'll say that, yeah, one every 4 months. I was just going to say we'll say that once a quarter, more or less.
Once a third.
Yeah, right.
Sure.
So if you were to buy 3 houses a year, you can retire in a year and a half to 2.5 years, based on the $600 to $900 a month,
Hmm.
right? See how this science works? Because it's science, it's just numbers.
Mm.
It's reverse engineering. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to add up your 13 weeks worth of income. I'm sorry, your 13 weeks worth of expenses. And then you're going to add 30% to it. Multiply it by 1.30%. That's your number. Then you need to back in your number based on the $600 to $900 a month, because I'm going to show you how to do that in a minute.
Mhm.
Right? So you know how much you need. Now, when I say retire early, I promise you, you will not believe me. You will not believe me. You will not believe me. But people that retire early, it only lasts for about between 4 to 6 months,
Mhm.
and they get bored. Unless, of course, there's like, they want to take care of their parents, or, if it's a wife and the husband's working and she wants to be a housewife, then those are different stories. But for the
Mhm.
average person that's 40 or 50 years old, they want to retire early, they'll get bored.
Sure.
So,
Now what?
yeah. So the point is that this plan is an expandable plan that could keep you just busy enough so you're not bored, and yet have huge returns.
Mm.
Just keep building your portfolio. Okay. Now, what about the deal structures? Here's the bomb. This is the bomb of the podcast, because I've talked about this, but I'm not sure I've ever been this clear about it.
Yeah.
See, the only way to retire quickly, have I made that clear? There's only one way,
Yes. Yes. Only one.
with plenty of resources and plenty of money, is to use our 2 common used formula. It seems like it's too simple, right? So it's like my saying is, it seems simplistic, but not simple to do.
Mm.
And that's money now, money monthly, money later.
Right.
That is the only way to retire early, is with that formula. Now picture this. You start doing $300,000 houses. You ask for 10% down, knowing you're not going to get 10% down,
Mm.
right? From most. So we won't let anybody in a house. And if you listen to other podcasts, you'll hear me say this for years. But the only way we'll let somebody in a house is if we get minimum 5% down, because at least we can get a FHA mortgage with 5% down.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The other 5% that they don't have now, we take in monthly payments. That is above and beyond the lease payment or the monthly payment. We do not give credits on the monthly payment. So if they're paying $1,700 a month for this house, the $1,700 is for usage. That's all it is. There's no principal reduction. There's no put some towards down payment. There's not any of that.
It's not a layaway plan.
That's right. But if they want to do down payment assistance, which is what we call this, that extra money could be paid. So in other words, I have a house we were talking about in Colchester. It actually caught on fire, and I'm working on that right now. But they pay $2,000 a month.
Mm.
Their standard operating basis is I need $2,000 a month to pay for my house.
Yep.
$1,770 is the rent. $230 is down payment assistance. Right. So if you look at that, so I have $230,000 times $230 times 12. They're paying $2,760 a year towards down payment assistance.
Mm-hmm.
Now, don't get all nervous about that. I'm not going to go into this now, but I'll have you know that I've worked out the numbers, and this is not what you think, because you're thinking I'm collecting that money and I'm like, all I'm doing is pulling my profit forward.
Mm.
No, because on the lease agreement, on the option agreement, we put in there a 3% appreciation value. Right. So let's say it's a $300,000 house times 3%. We're getting $9,000 in appreciation, and we're giving back $2,700.
Right. Well, you build it into the contract that if they stay in the house a year, because people ask me that. Well, what if people stayed there a year, 2, 3, 4? The house price goes up. Don't I get that? So we want to build it into the contract that if the longer they stay, they have to make up that difference that the market is appreciating. So they should pay it. So that extra that they would owe is more than the down payment assistance money.
So there's a difference of $6,250.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, you're asking them to pay the 5% over the course of, the term of the lease, which is 3 years. Anyways, I'm going to go over those numbers in a minute. So 5% on $30,000 is $15,000 now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The additional $15,000, which was not paid, which is part of the 10%. Are you with me? So 10% is $30,000 total. They're going to give you $15,000 now, and then they're going to pay you monthly on the other $15,000.
Mm-hmm.
It's no interest, no loan, no nothing. You're just going to write a promissory note. It's a simple way to do it. You're not going to do anything more than you'll put it in your option agreement, but then you'll write a promissory note. I don't file them. I don't do anything because in my documents, we have what they call a cross default paragraph. And the cross default means that if they default by not paying their down payment assistance, it automatically defaults their lease. You can evict them. And vice versa. If they don't pay their lease, then all the down payment money they gave you, they lose.
Mm.
It's called cross default, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to get that on eforms.com. So the additional 15, so we were asking for $30,000 down. We're taking down $15,000 up front, and we're going to give them a payment. We'll say that it's a 3-year lease, which is what I do nowadays because of the prices of houses. That would mean it would be $416 a month.
Mm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Also, if you did that for 5 years, that would be $250 a month.
Right. So you can adjust the numbers depending.
So this is on top of the profit you're already making from the house. So see, this adds up.
Mm.
But wait, if you did 3 of these deals per year, it would give you $45,000 because remember, you did $15,000 in cash up front.
Mhm.
right? So you
Oh,
took $15,000 now, and you did the payment for the other 15,000,
mhm.
but you got $15,000 now,
Yeah.
right? And you should not have that into this deal, the 15,000. Okay, so the 15,000 is yours. Now the thing to do is to keep some of that in reserves for your business,
Mhm.
right? Or if someone doesn't pay, you had the money. So if somebody doesn't pay their mortgage, you had the money in a reserve account.
Right.
So if you did $15,000 over the course of 3 years, that would be $45,000.
Mhm.
If you kept 15,000 in reserve for 3 houses, that would be enough,
Sounds like it.
right? That means you would have had $30,000 over the course of 3 years, $10,000 a year, to pay down your debt.
Well, you said there's 3 houses though, right? Were there
Right,
3 houses in 1 year?
right.
So
Yeah,
you'd
so
have
it would be more money. Yeah, it
yeah,
would
we'd
be.
have 30,000, in that first year.
Yeah. Oh, I did that later, I think. Anyways,
Well,
yeah.
you
So
have
you got $30,000 a year. That's the point that I'm trying to make. You got
yeah,
thirty
yeah, well,
thousand dollars a
nice
year to
chunk
pay
of
down your
dough.
debt,
Yeah.
right? Right. So you still play the game of needing $5,200 a month, which is your cash flow.
Mhm.
But this $30,000 pays down credit cards,
Mm.
cars pays off cars, or any other liability you need that will now lessen the 5,200. So you don't need 5,200 anymore
Yep.
because you're paying down the debt with these chunks of dough.
Mm.
If you did this, here we go. If you did this for 3 years, bought 3 houses per year, that would be a total of $135,000 in chunks of cash over 3 years,
Mm.
right? And remember what I said earlier, liability means money goes out and never comes back. So your car payment is a liability. Money goes out and never comes back. You get the use
Mhm.
of the car, but the car doesn't hold its value,
Yep.
right? Asset means the money goes out and continuously comes back in, right? Which is the famous passive income conversation,
Yeah.
right? Passive incomes means money coming in without a lot of work, not no work, a lot of work. People confuse that. They think that passive income is you set it and forget it and it goes forever. I'm telling you, automaticities do not work that way. They self implode. You need to make sure you manage your business a few hours a month or a few hours a week, whatever it takes. You constantly need to make sure you check checkbooks, make sure there's not something that's being charged that you don't know about,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Make sure that there's not mistakes, make sure that, because especially in today's world, a lot of people using electronic tools,
Mhm.
right? And they miss things. Okay, now let's talk about deal structures. So you can get money now, money monthly, and money later with a rent to own deal, right?
Mhm.
It's also called a sandwich lease option. Basically, you're gonna lease option the property from your seller, and you're gonna sublease it to your buyer. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay. See, a slot deal, which we call, which is a slot deal, is basically doing a lease option with your owner and then wholesaling it to your buyer. You don't stay in the deal because they owe too much money. So you make money now, which is your profit or your fee that you charge. It's not really a fee, but so you can inflate the price of the house. So if the house is worth 300,000, they owe 300,000 or 290,000. You can sell that house for, we'll say, 310,000 and make 10 grand.
Mhm.
It's in and out in 30 days. You don't get any money other than the transaction fee
Yep.
or the transaction profit. It's not a fee, right?
Mhm.
So we don't do those. What we do is a rent to own, which means you have to have at least 15% worth of equity and 20% worth of cash flow. Now you can do a sandwich lease option because you can do a rent to own with the seller. In other words, a lease option with the seller, and then put your buyer, sublease it to your buyer. The difference between a slot deal and a rent to own is a slot deal. You're signing an option agreement with your seller. I'm sorry, you're signing a lease option with your seller, and then assigning it to your buyer once they pay you your profit. With a rent to own, you're doing the same thing. You're signing a lease option with your seller, but because you have 15% worth of equity and 20% worth of cash flow, you're going to sign a separate lease option with your buyer, so your seller doesn't see what your buyer's paying, and your buyer doesn't see what your seller's paying, or you're paying your seller. So there are two sets of lease option agreements. That's the difference. But you make 15% equity and 20% worth of cash flow. Right? This is a rent-to-own, money now, money monthly, money later. You could do this for $100 for the option agreement. You can find a seller that will rent to you. You can find these anywhere. The most common place is on Facebook Marketplace. Just go in the rent section, or go on Zillow for rent section. Go on apartments.com because they're all rentals, and just start texting people. Would you be willing to rent for a year or two and then sell it to me later? And you'll find buyers that will do this. I'm sorry, sellers that will do this. Number two, you can get money now, money monthly, money later on a subject to deal. Subject to deal means that you have to have 80% worth of equity. And many of those deals, which is how we will this is the best way to do it, how we'll make our biggest profit. Many of those deals have 3 to 5% interest loans that you're going to take over. Subject to means you're going to take over the person's mortgage, subject to the agreement they made with the original bank.
Yeah,
that's what subject to means. And and what we do is we put them in a trust, so it looks like that we're actually doing estate planning. So the bank never triggers a due on sale clause. So you don't have to worry about all that crap that everybody talks about on the internet. Okay, so we do this. And we have podcasts on this, by the way. If you go to flippinghousesforrookies.com/podcast, there's a search bar in there that you can search for any podcast that we did. All right, so that's pretty cool because we're gonna set the payment up as if the owner was going to have to get an 8% mortgage, because if they went and got a mortgage to buy a house right now, they'd pay 7.5 or 8%. So just the difference between a 5% and an 8% mortgage is your cash flow. It's often on a $300,000 house, $300, $400, $500. So between that number and your down payment assistance, you're making that $600 to $900 without even working. It's done for you already. The next deal that we could do, deal structure, is owner financing. Especially if you do principal only payments, which we do. We'll tend to overpay for a property. I mean, if you were to take, we do this in seminars. I say to people, raise your hand if you own a house, and then I'll just pick somebody and say, how much did you pay for the house? And they'll tell me, well, I paid $250,000. Oh, you did? Did you pay cash? Oh no, I got a mortgage. Oh, how much is your mortgage payment? Principal and interest. And then they give us their mortgage, and then we multiply that over 30 years, and we find out that $250,000 house is actually $500,000 because they haven't paid for it yet. They're paying interest on that money, so they're paying 2.5 to 3 times the amount of money for that house. So if we were to offer somebody an extra $50,000 for their house, we're not overpaying. We just need to make sure we have terms long enough to absorb that extra $50,000. So instead of doing a 5-year term, we want to make sure we do a 10-year term, and it will absorb, because the appreciation and principal pay down and all that stuff the numbers will work its way out. Right.
And when you make a payment, the entire amount comes off what you owe on the house. It isn't principal and interest; it's just principal, and that can be double reduction on the principal because there's no interest. It will come down pretty fast.
Yeah, because the tenant buyer still owes you. So if you bought a house for $260,000, you pay $1,000 a month. At the end of 60 months, you'll only owe $200,000 to your seller, but your buyer still owes you $260,000. So you make the $60,000 when the buyer cashes you out.
Yep.
Okay, so These are the basic structures that we want to use, right? Now, these 3 deals spawn off into other things that you hear, like wraparound mortgages, land contracts, master leases on multifamilies. You know, these 3 types of deals are the core types of deals that you can retire early or buy a property with. All the other language comes from these deals.
Right.
These deals are the strategy, and the other ways that they do it are actually paperwork strategies.
Mm-hmm.
Because realize that creative real estate is all about the paperwork that controls the property. Has nothing to do with the property. The property is a subproduct, or it's the symptom of the disease, right? When we're in creative real estate, we're dealing with the paperwork that controls the property, not the property. The property is just a way to find the paperwork or to be able to write paperwork to make the money.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think I'm full of crap, just look at how a bank does it. Because the banks are in banking business, they're not in the real estate business, and they just need a house and somebody to be excited about the house to be able to sign their 38 documents and pay them 8% money for the next 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's all the house does. Okay. So the thing to really understand is the number we spoke of today is only half of our pot of gold. The money now, the money monthly, the money later. So a rent to own is good because it handles money now, money monthly, money later,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't get a deed.
Right.
So you miss out on all the tax deductions and the depreciation. You're missing out on half the profit centers. And when you're retiring early, remember, there's only 2 things you could do. You can raise your income or reduce your liabilities or your debt.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the ways we reduce our liability and our debt is with the tax deductions. You pay less taxes when you're retired,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is why it's so important that you get a deed. Well, let's just say if you do it correctly, the $5,200 per month can actually be tax-free with a good CPA or accountant,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you could make $5,200 a month, or we'll say $1,000 a week, and have no taxes. So it's a spendable $1,000 a week, right? Now for the icing on the cake, once you get the hang of buying 5 to 9 houses, how hard is it to buy 1 or 2 per year and just keep going? And you're creative real estate, so you get money now, money monthly, money later.
Mm-hmm.
So once you hit your 5,200, right, you can start doing more houses. Now, the way you should think, listen to me, the way you should think is like this. I need a new car. Okay, how can I go buy a house to make the car payment? I want to buy a timeshare. Okay, so how do I buy a house to make the money for the timeshare, the payments on the timeshare? Because you're going to get 15 grand now, and you're going to get, we'll say, $600 to $900 a month, right? So if you keep thinking that all the way through your retirement, like, oh, I want to buy a vacation home. Okay, so how many houses do I need to buy to be able to pay for that vacation home?
Mm-hmm.
Right? You want to travel the world, and it costs $10,000 or $20,000. Okay, where I need to buy a house to pay for that.
Yep.
Once you have, say it again.
The down payment will do that.
Right.
You get $15,000 down. You can buy a car or half a car or whatever you need.
Right. So once you hit your stabilization of I have my $5,200 a year or whatever your number is, right? And you're not working, and you're going to find out by not working, you're going to have less stress and you're going to think better. Mm-hmm. So you can now start hunting around for some deals, and you're like, I always wanted to get a built-in swimming pool in my backyard, and they're $75,000. Okay, well, how many houses do I have to buy, and how can I pay for that? Right? Which, by the way, after you do this for a while, that $75,000 may just be as simple as refinancing one of your houses and having your tenant paying for your swimming pool. You see how the thinking goes? It's completely different.
I understand. I don't think we were talking about this. I don't know where I caught this, but they're talking about commercial properties, big buildings that somebody owns, and somehow they get the property one way or the other. But down the road, they refinance it and do something else. And then they refinance it and do something else. They never, ever pay them off because it's like leaving money in the building. Why leave the money sitting when you can pull it out and do something with it? They never get paid off, they say.
See, I have a different story because I want all my houses to be free and clear. But that's because I'm working now and I have income, right? I want to save that. That's like, to me, my savings account for my retirement later on, so I can do it later on, right?
Yeah, well, for an individual,
We
it
need-
makes more sense. These, corporate stuff, commercial stuff, nobody owns. It's corporate.
Yeah, that's because they get tremendous write-offs on the loans. If they own them free and clear, they don't get those write-offs and they lose money.
Yeah.
All right. So we need to end off because we're at 5 minutes after. Because now realize all this is done because we do not have landlord obligations. We're assigning the landlord obligations to our buyer. Remember, creative real estate is made to take money out of the property, not put money into it. Basically, because the seller already has the money into it and we're just leveraging that money. Right. And also, like I just said a few minutes ago, we're controlling, creative real estate is controlling the paperwork that owns the real estate, not the real estate itself. So we're just being a bank, technically. So who's going to own the property? Who owns the property technically when we're done? The buyer.
The buyer. Yeah, not even us, the buyer in the end.
So who's going to do the maintenance on the property?
Buyer.
I mean, proof of this is if you have a mortgage now and your toilet plugs up or your sewage line plugs up, who are you going to call? Not your bank. That's our position we need to take on these deals, right? And not many people talk about this, right?
That's a big reason people don't want to have property. Oh, I don't want to have the responsibility. Well, you don't.
So I'm done with the podcast. I'm going to talk a couple more minutes about something that's on my heart. So if you want to go, you can go, right? But technology, because I'm running a little bit late, we spent 10 minutes in the beginning I shouldn't have. Plus, with technology advancing so much, it's getting easier and easier to do deals. This is why I chuckle when I hear someone balk at my monthly coaching fee or the few $100s it costs monthly to do creative REI replay that does 90% of the work for you. So most people think their time is not worth anything, especially if they have a job. They're going to do it to save themselves money, right? And it doesn't work because, first of all, they never do it. And second of all, I just laid out for you a perfect strategy that you'll have to do. But who's saying to you, what's the next step? I just gave you the elephant, right? Now you need to chew on them one bite at a time. Who says where to bite them first? Right? So it makes me chuckle when people think that they can do this on their own. Well, yeah, it took me 30 years to do it on my own. You want to spend 30 years doing it? Go have at it. Or 25 years before I was in the position I'm in now. We'll talk about that. Taking a 7-month sabbatical. Wouldn't you rather just pay a few $1,000s a year so you can retire in 3 to 5 years? I mean, if I could have done it back then, there was not the technology we have now. I couldn't have done it then.
Yeah.
You could spend that few $1,000s a year, almost guaranteed that you would get a deal. Most don't know the potential of their lifestyle they can generate with Creative REI Replay. They don't know it. We're a new company. I got a support ticket yesterday from Creative REI Replay that Sean sent me. Said I had to call and talk to this guy. This guy was paying for Creative REI Replay. He stopped paying for it because he felt like he wasn't making any money with it. Okay? Ready for this?
Yeah.
6 or 8 weeks later, one of the deals that Creative REI Replay was working on came through. It was something he was working on, and it wasn't even follow-up because he shut him off. They just remembered him and called him on his cell phone.
Oh, no kidding.
He made $112,000 off that one deal.
Oh my God.
He's all over us. Can I get back in without paying the money, without paying the $1,500 to get in? He's like all over us. Oh my God, I never realized. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And until something like that happens to somebody, they don't understand.
Oh God.
Right? So see, the coaching and the software, and you don't have to have both, but either one or the other, thinking of it as a liability instead of an asset, that's what keeps most people away from retiring early. They don't look at it as an asset. They look at it as a liability.
Mhm.
Not enough do an analysis of income to expenses when making a decision about coaching or creative REI replay.
Mhm.
They don't know their full potential of retiring early, like I just laid out to you today. They don't look at both sides of the table. They only look at the liability, right? This is much like when we have a seller that says, well, if I let you take over my house subject to, how am I going to get another mortgage?
Mhm.
Well, the reason why is because you're paying that mortgage and they're just looking at, well, I have this monthly payment of $1,800 a month and it's going to show up on my mortgage statement for my next mortgage, and I don't have enough income to cover that 1,800 plus my new house. No, it's not that way. I'm paying the 1,800, so you're going to show on your income statement that I'm paying $1,800 a month, and you have a liability of $1,800 a month. So it's going to raise your income by $20,000 a year because I'm making that payment for you. Most don't take both the income and the liabilities into fact.
You got to look at all the numbers, the whole story, get the whole picture.
Which is what happens with creative REI replay. Most don't take a look at what their potential is and what they could do if they really did it. They don't trust themselves. That's what happens. That's why most people don't buy. And I promise you, it's at a point now where if you just do the beginning stages and get things going, like the guy that got a $112,000 house by mistake, right? You don't realize that stuff can happen. I mean, it's like throwing a pebble in the water, right? It's the ripple effect, right?
Bill, I did something real easy, 30 seconds. Years ago, Mary and I were we had crap for retirement money coming in. There was nothing there much. So we had to do something. So we had money going into some retirement account, but if we just did that, it would not be enough. So I said, let's take that money and spend it on real estate. And we did all our expenses with that and made tons of money since then. Way more than if I just let the money sitting there growing in. So take your retirement money, whatever that is a month, use that to invest and make tons more. That's how I did it.
Yep.
It wasn't new money. It was money I already had. But instead of sitting, I employed it to make more. Nice. If you're going to be an investor, damn it, invest.
Right.
Take a risk, do something.
Well, it's too bad that these type of thinking makes decisions that keep most people broke. Right. So, in final, I want to just say to my creative REI replay users that are listening to this podcast, because I dedicated this to you, if these things are not happening, it's one of three reasons. One, you're not working, and working 2 hours a week isn't always enough. Two, you have the wrong farm market. Or three, you're altering what we tell you to do. It's one of those three things. So if you're not doing at least 2 or 3 houses a year, which is way stupid, you could do that by accident. Just let the system run itself and it will do it with all the AI and everything. Those three reasons are the reasons why you're not doing a deal. Okay? End of story. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We went 13 minutes past the hour. I hope it was worth it. Thank you so much for all your support. Make sure you subscribe to us. Make sure you like us. Make sure you leave us a good review. And if you have any questions, you can go to flippinghousesforrookies.com and you can go to the top right-hand side. There's a support ticket there. Or you can go to WhatsApp Messenger and find Let's Talk Real Estate and get in that group. And not only myself, but a bunch of other people, like-minded people are there too. So over and out. We'll talk to you on episode number 402. Have a good week.